In Italy, the religion is Catholicism, but the god is Ferrari. And elsewhere in the world, Ferrari has become a brand name to rival Lear or Rolex or the House of Windsor. A Ferrari these days is more than a simple motor car. It's a steel deity. It's sex on wheels. Now, tonight, in a programme given over exclusively to what has become an Italian legend, we're going to try and explain what it is that makes a Ferrari so special. All you have to do is sit back, put your feet up and enjoy half an hour of automotive pornography. Ferrari has never been tempted to make a car for the people. All Ferraris are expensive, beautiful, impractical and fast. They're out of the reach of mortal man, and they always have been. Mr. and Mrs. Normal from Acacia Avenue cannot afford a Ferrari, and that makes every single one of them a dream car. To watch a Ferrari, any Ferrari, on any track, anywhere, is like watching poetry in motion. Kinetic art at its very, very best. It doesn't matter whether you're talking about an old 125, a fire-spitting F40, or the astonishing LM. These are more than mere cars. They're alive. They have a heart and a soul. They have this man's soul, Enzo Ferrari.
I giovani d'oggi possono sapere poco di quello che è stata la mia vita e il mio passato. Se dovessi dire che quando sono partito pensavo di farmi qualche cosa di più di una sola macchina, direi una bugia. Io da ragazzo, essendo nato in un'officina, ho pensato all'automobile e l'ho sempre amata e ho sempre detto un giorno arriverò anch'io a farmi una macchina mia.
He could never have guessed, however, that one day people would come for lunch in a Ferrari restaurant, where they would eat from Ferrari plates using Ferrari napkins and drink Ferrari wine in a town where they name the streets after Ferrari Formula One drivers and where every other shop only sells Ferrari memorabilia. Ferrari eau de toilette and plastic pedal cars are a far cry from those early days. The war had only been over for 2 years when this arrived on the scene. It was the very first Ferrari, the 125C. When on only its second outing, this little car with a 1.5-litre V12 engine won the Rome Grand Prix, everyone knew there was a new kid in town, a kid that was to become a legend. Now, running a racing team is not the cheapest thing you can do, so to finance it, Enzo Ferrari decided to sell the cars on Monday that people had seen racing on Sunday. In those days, that was not too hard because the cars people raced were largely road legal. You really could buy a racing car and use it every day. And you could do that with endurance racing cars right up until the 1960s. This 250 LM won 10 major events between 63 and 66, including Le Mans. Just 35 were made, so they're now ferociously valuable. Even today, in a depressed market, you'd need to set aside a 7-figure sum to buy this car. It's worth it, though, for the noise alone. If in the 1960s you were part of the emerging jet set and you wanted to buy yourself a racing car to use for trips into town, naturally, you'd want a racing car that actually won races. Well, Ferrari did, over and over and over again. In 1958, they won Le Mans and the Formula One World Championship in the same year. Then they did it again in 1960 and again in 1964. No one had ever done that before. No one has ever done it since, and chances are no one ever will. They were the winners, the champions, the greatest, and the stars were queuing up to buy the cars. Everyone from Ingrid Bergman to Eric Clapton has had a Ferrari. This is perhaps the most famous and evocative of them all. It's the 250 GTO. At the height of the boom, when city traders would deal in soiled underwear if they thought there was a market, one of these was reportedly sold for £10 million. Now that makes it the most valuable car in the world. But why? Why should it be a Ferrari, and why a GTO? We need advice here. We need to talk to someone who really understands. Chris Rea.
GTO is definitely one of my favourite cars. I'm one of the many people in the world who wish they'd made more than 39 of them. My father was Italian, and the first race I remember was a black and white BBC broadcast on a Sunday afternoon. And if you imagine the house has all my uncles all sat round with my father, and they've had an Italian meal, and they're going to watch the Monaco Grand Prix and see the new Ferrari. And the famous phrase was, I'd say to my father, "What colour are these Ferraris, Dad?" And he turned to me and he goes, "Blood red, son, blood red." And it just immediately, this effect on a 9-year-old kid. And then he went on to tell me that the leading driver was a famous German count called Wolfgang von Trips. I mean, this whole world filled me with a passion.
Red is the color I choose.
And then, unfortunately, he was killed at Monza the same year. And that was the first person that I ever remember dying. And it actually did affect me. I was actually off school for 3 weeks and was completely distraught over this incident. And it lived with me all my life. People say, "Are you a Ferrari owner?" And I always say, "No, I'm tifosi." You know, I'm just completely... The whole Ferrari thing is my life. Owning one in a garage doesn't really appeal to me. But being there when they're going round tracks is what it's all about.
I think a Ferrari's got to be used as it was designed to be used. Well, it's a 1959 250 GT Tour de France. I think the sound of that V12 engine is really very exciting. It's wonderful to throw around a track like this. The F40 I had for a couple of years, and it just didn't excite me as much as the old cars.
Everyone has a favourite Ferrari, and I'm no exception. The greatest of them all, in my opinion, was the 365 GTB4, a car that is best known as the Daytona. It came along in 1968 and was one of the first of a new breed of high-performance cars for the road, a breed that would become known as supercars.
Daytona. Shine your light on me.
This car was not designed to race, but it still had Castrol R in its veins and an engine that ran on pure adrenaline. It was named after the Florida beach city that bills itself as the birthplace of speed, which is apt because this has a 4.4-litre V12 engine. It was also quite beautiful to look at, but that beauty was more than skin deep. That's a work of art, not an engine. It's got 4 camshafts, 6 twin-choke carburetors. It churns out 352 brake horsepower. The American magazine Road and Track managed to squeeze 174 miles an hour out of a Daytona. They got it to do the standing quarter in 13.8 seconds. In 1968, that was nothing short of sensational. And so was the price. At $20,000, this was the most expensive car that Ferrari had ever made. You get plenty of pounds for your pounds, though. The doors and the boot lid may have been aluminium, but it weighs about the same as a cathedral, and that does have some effect on handling. At slow speeds, it's as ponderous as a bull elephant with a gammy leg and a hangover, and you begin to wonder what all the fuss was about. But take it to the countryside, open the taps on that Himalayan engine, then it wakes up, a bit like the driver. I have been beside myself with excitement for these last few weeks, ever since I discovered I was actually going to drive a Ferrari Daytona. And I can't tell you what it's like to actually get behind the wheel. Well, I can actually. It's like driving a bus. A very fast bus, but a bus nevertheless. You've got this giant steering wheel, no power assistance, the front wheels are bucking this way and that. But do you know something? I just don't care. I had a photograph of a Daytona on my bedroom wall when I was 8 years old, and I've wanted to drive one ever since. I'm achieving a lifelong ambition. They made 1,300 Daytonas, including 127 convertibles. And no, the one in Miami Vice was a fake. When it went out of production in 1974, everyone assumed the days of classic front-engine Ferraris was at an end. But they were wrong. In fact, it was around 1974 that various die-hard Ferrari fanatics began predicting an end for the company lock, stock and barrel. They'd argue that Fiat was now in charge and that the cars had become nothing more than wheeled gin palaces. Tell them that a modern-day 348 has air conditioning and they'll go into a coma and die. And in recent years, these prophets of doom have been getting ever more vociferous because their beloved race car hasn't exactly been trampling all over the competition in the world of Formula One. In fact, Ferrari hasn't won a race since 1990. Despite an unlimited budget, they haven't been on the winner's rostrum for the longest period in the team's entire history.
Right-hander into the old hairpin. Senna is up to third.
Things are now so bad that the relative newcomer, McLaren, has just overtaken Ferrari as the most successful Grand Prix team of all time. Now, back in the days when all the cars were grey and people walked quickly, the only checkered feature of Ferrari's life was the flag they saw every weekend.
Ferrari wins! Ferrari second!
But it's all gone wrong now, though. Despite the recent problems, though, Formula One drivers still clamour for a drive in a Ferrari, and not only because they pay the most.
Of course, Ferrari is a special thing to drive. Every driver's dream is to drive for Ferrari.
More so than Williams?
I think the most important is to win, but I think sometimes it's even more nice not to win, but to drive a Ferrari.
And the Ferrari president is pragmatic too.
I think that in the Ferrari history we've had
up and down in Formula One. In 90, we were very close to win the championship. As you remember, we have lost the championship at the last race. Now, with a lot of problems, we are trying to go up again, and I'm sure next year we'll be competitive again.
But for now, the only way Ferrari can win is to make sure the only car on the grid is a Ferrari.
For sure, it's very important to emphasize the sport tradition of Ferrari. And this is the reason why I wanted to go back to the tracks, to the circuits with our clients. And we are having a huge success with this challenge to give the possibility to normal clients to arrive at the track with their own Ferrari, then put slick tires, make 3-4 hours of competition, and then go home. And this is very good.
Very good it may be, but it's hardly racing. It's just a lot of rich kids showing off their hairstyles. But does this matter? Are the road cars now strong enough to stand up on their own four wheels with their air conditioning and their cushy carpets? Do they really need that race-winning image anymore?
For us, it's important to be the team in the world with the longest history in Formula One, with the largest number of victory, and this is our history. You know, we will continue in Formula One. We are the only one to build engine and chassis. This is the myth of Ferrari. And in the meantime, we sell 3,000 cars per year all over the world without big problems.
Talk to some of his customers, and you can see why. For these people, a Ferrari is more than a car. It's a drug, and they are addicted.
If I'm going around a roundabout and it feels really good and you sit your bottom into the corner and it's really going nicely, then I go around again, just for the sheer hell of it.
I just thought it was a heap of metal that just went fast. But now, that purr of the engine, the beautiful feeling as you go around the corners, and I am hooked. I really am hooked.
I've always wanted one. When I was 16 years of age. It took me until I was 31 to get it. Basically, you think there are people with lots and lots of money can afford them. They're not. I mean, I've done it myself, saved up, bought it, it's mine. And you don't have to be a rich man.
He went out and bought this Ferrari, unbeknown to me. We were actually yachting enthusiasts, and I thought he'd gone off to buy a yacht. But then he came home with this lovely Ferrari. And I thought, well, if he's bought a Ferrari, perhaps now this is instead of a mistress.
And I have driven quite a lot of different cars, and some of them quite powerful. It's just something for me about Ferrari that I cannot find in any other car.
I know what she means. The company's leading light and driving force, Enzo Ferrari, has been dead for 5 years. Ferrari racing cars are out of the equation. And yet, this car, the brand new 348 Spider, a drop-top version of the 348 TB with one of the most elegant hoods in the world, can still grab you by the lapels and shake you until your teeth drop out.
I feel good. I knew that I wouldn't. I feel good. I knew that I wouldn't. So good. So good. I got you. Wow.
It costs £80,000 but has none of the electronic trickery normally associated with cars in this league. There's no flip-up roll bar, for instance, just 3.4 litres of V8 muscle and finesse. And then there's the noise, there's the howl and the wail of the camshafts when you accelerate, and when you decelerate, oh, I love that. The popping of the exhausts booming away like distant thunder.
When I hold you in my arms.
This car assaults all the senses. The leather smells good. It sounds terrific. See what I mean? It has drop-dead looks, it's as tactile as a peeled grape, and as far as taste is concerned, well, if I had one, I'd lick it clean every night. Even if it had been made by Wolseley, I would still adore it, but it has a Ferrari badge, and that gives it breeding and class. It's not some Jeffrey Archer type that's been made a lord for services rendered. This car has a hereditary peerage. It is an aristocrat. And more than that, it's an Italian aristocrat. And they know a thing or two about beauty and style in Italy, believe you me.
You know, when you are in Italy, surrounded by beautiful buildings and beautiful art, beautiful women, or such a beautiful countryside and nature, it's maybe easier to understand why such a beautiful car as Ferrari is was designed in this country. There is inspiration for beauty everywhere.
This car appeals to me partly because of past glories, but also because it is Italian. It is, I believe, the ultimate expression of late 20th century Italian automotive art. Well, almost. This is a party being held in Florence to celebrate the launch of a brand new Ferrari. A car that combines the style of Italy with that Ferrari pedigree. A car that blends power with practicality. A car that quite literally rewrites the supercar rulebook. But that's tomorrow. Right now, we're partying, so cheers. Like pretty well every single Ferrari since 1950, this car, the 456 GT, has been designed by Pininfarina. It is staggeringly beautiful. It's the long-awaited replacement for the Daytona, a long-nosed, short-tailed, perfectly proportioned Grand Tourer that does more than cock a snook at current trends. It takes fashion and, like the Aston Martin Vantage, it throttles it. This is classical elegance. And it's the same story inside. You still get the chromed gear lever and the chrome gate, though now with 7 slots. The dials are simple, white on black. The seats are leather. It's simple, uncluttered. If it was clothing, it would be a cocktail dress. A spacious one, though, because there in the back are 2 seats. So you put your luggage in the boot and you go for a drive. You will arrive wherever it is you're going sooner than you thought, too, because this family saloon is no slouch. It is frighteningly fast. It gets from 0 to 60 in 5.2 seconds, and the top speed is an amazing 194 miles an hour. It's the fastest 4-seater in the world. And in case you're sitting there wondering about fuel economy, let me remind you that petrol is cheaper than milk. So I'll do you a deal. You don't ask me how many miles to the gallon I'm doing in my Ferrari, and I won't come round to your house in the morning asking how much milk you're putting on your cornflakes. All right? The 456 wasn't designed to save the planet. It was designed to get a family of 4 across continents fast, and it does that with consummate ease. But it was also designed to be stylish, and it does that even better. But of course, the central pillar to any Ferrari is its engine. And the 456 is no different. There it is, and here are some numbers. It has 12 cylinders, 48 valves, 4 camshafts. It develops 442 brake horsepower. That's 4 times more than the dear old Ferrari 125C. It's 4 times more than your Golf GTI. But it's 100 horsepower less than the Aston Martin Vantage. However, before you all start waving Union Jacks out of the window, I have to tell you that this Italian thoroughbred weighs rather a lot less than the British Shire horse. As a result, it feels more nimble, less like a chest of drawers with a jet engine strapped to the roof and more like a Lipizzana. Through the corners, the 456 is in a class of its own. OK, the Aston does well, despite its girth. But with the Ferrari, there's no need for buts. Its responses are sharp and faster than a lightning bolt. You can arrive at a bend with huge speed, use the huge four-pot brakes to wash it off, and then entrust the turn to nearly 50 years of cornering know-how before burying the throttle again. It doesn't take very long before you're hurling it into corners with the carefree abandon of someone who's just been granted eternal life. I just love this car. However, don't get confused. It may have an old-fashioned layout with the engine at the front and the gearbox at the back, in line with the driven wheels, but make no mistake, the 456 is in tune with the times. As far as toys are concerned, you get electric windows, electric seats, air conditioning, and that's it. But that's all you need, because this is not some namby-pamby posing pouch. It's a driver's car. It's like espresso coffee. It's small, tight, and effective. Nothing like cappuccino, all froth and no substance. I really love this car. To keep you on the straight and narrow, you get electrically adjustable, self-leveling suspension, but no traction control. That would spoil the fun. And anyway, what do you expect for £150,000?
Di perfetto al mondo non c'è niente. C'è dei miglioramenti continui, costanti, inesorabili. Bisogna saperli seguire, possibilmente prevenire.
What Ferrari has done with the 456 is ape the style and panache of cars like the Daytona, the lovely old Tour de France, and the sensational GTO, the machines that made Ferrari famous. And they've blended this style with modern electronics, reliability, and power so that they can win on the road. Enzo would have been proud.